Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news. You're listening to Bloomberg Businessweek with Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
Jeff Jones is President and Chief Executive Officer of H&R Block. He joins us from Kansas City, Missouri. Jeff, it's good to have you back with us. How are you?
Hey, Carol.
How are you? Hi. And how are you kind of navigating our environment today? And I do apologize in advance because we may have to interrupt to go to the White House. But in the meantime, tell us about today's environment, especially as we keep a really strong watch on what's coming out of D.C. How are you navigating through?
Yeah, I appreciate it and fully understand if we got to cut away. I mean, we are at the beginning of our most important time of the year, which is where Americans turn to us for help to get their tax refund. And so, much of the conversation you're having about tariffs and other things don't impact our business directly, but if they do impact the health of the consumer, that's where we can step in and try to help them get the biggest tax refund, get financial products and things like Spruce. But it is a very, very busy time for everyone, and I think we're all waiting to see kind of what normal becomes.
What are you seeing from your clients right now? How is their economic picture looking? You work with certainly a distinct segment of the U.S. population. How are they doing?
We do. We do an annual survey with our consumers, a very, very large survey. And in general, what we've seen is financially, they're optimistic. What they've been worried most about is debt. And that's played out in terms of college debt and other things, credit card debt for certain. But right now, what they turn to us for is to get their tax refund. Remember, for most Americans, they get a refund, and that could be $3,000 or $4,000 or more. That's the biggest check they'll get all year. So right now, what I know most Americans are waiting on is, what's my refund going to be, and how do I get every dollar possible?
Would you say consumers, how would you describe them right now, Jeff, in terms of how they are doing? We saw consumer spending numbers come out. They came out stronger than expected today. They're backward looking. If we get tariffs, that could impact things, especially if companies pass that along. But how would you describe the consumer? Because you guys see a lot of data, especially when it comes to, I feel like, a wide group of Americans.
I think if I had to simplify to one single word, it would be waiting. They have cash. We're seeing spending return. They do have debt, but they're waiting to see what this normal is going to be. With so many campaign promises, with all the executive orders that are happening, when we talk to consumers, they're not sure where things are going to ultimately settle. And so waiting might be a really simple word.
Well, we're waiting for a lot of policies from the president, and I'm wondering how those policies could affect you and your clients. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that the president signed back in 2017, that's set to expire at the end of this year. How are you looking at that as affecting the way that you prepare taxes for folks?
The big thing that impacts people is just change in tax policy. And so, when you think at a local level, a state level, and a federal level, there are changes every single year. And so where consumers get confused, where they lack confidence, is when there's new change. And so, we don't know what ultimately will happen in terms of policy. We'll wait to see. But this tax season, right now, before April 15th, there really is unlikely to be any changes to tax policy that impact this year, with one exception. And you've probably covered a lot about 1099Ks. And so that is one big change to tax policy this year. And millions of Americans are going to get something in the mail they're not used to getting based on being a local seller or different things. So that is one change we're expecting this year.
Hey, I am curious about the IRS and what the Trump administration could do in terms of cutting the budget. We have done some extensive reporting here at Bloomberg about the antiquated technology and resources that the IRS has been dealing with for years. A firing of workers and cutting back telework, all these different things. What's your read on that? And I'm just curious if there's implications for your business, Jeff.
So I think it's easy probably for listeners and viewers today to think more about the IRS in enforcement. And obviously that's a big part of the job. But the IRS touches more Americans every year than any other federal agency. And so we are absolutely supporters of them getting more modern technology, the right resources to provide customer service. The number one question that people ask is, where's my refund? But when the IRS doesn't have the resources to answer the phone to answer that question, H&R Block is the one that gets the phone call.
Oh, interesting.
And so that's where we just know they need modernization, they need resources, and they need to be able to provide great customer service for the 150 million Americans that rely on them for this interaction.
I'm curious if you have reached out to the president about this, because you do have such a great vantage point, Jeff, for probably, a bunch of Americans, probably a fair amount who voted for Donald Trump. You really kind of get to middle America and you get to see a lot. Have you reached out to have a conversation about the implications for a lot of Americans if indeed he goes through with some of his plans to cut the budget and workers possibly at the IRS?
And we're celebrating our 70th anniversary this year, which means we've been through countless administrations. And our teams have definitely been in touch as the transition teams have been put in place and now things are getting settled. We have enjoyed a great relationship with all administrations, Treasury and IRS.
Right.
Because our work is so inextricably linked to the federal and state governments.
Got it.
They know we're here and ready to share any insights we have.
Jeff Jones, you're a champ. Thank you so much. President and Chief Executive Officer of H&R Block.